Hello, yogis. Today we're going to talk about how to find balance in an unbalanced world. We're going to talk about a lot of things. What does balance mean? Yoga and wellness culture speaks a lot about balance. And um, I think it's interesting to look at, what does that look like in our culture, in our day-to-day lives, in our relationships and communities? And how does this influence our growth and exploration in yoga? I find that the concept of balance is, like, to me, a little bit elusive, particularly in the context of our work and personal lives. As yoga teachers and practitioners, we often find ourselves navigating a delicate balance between striving or working towards our goals and stillness and ease, between ambition and contentment. So today we want to talk about, what does balance really mean? And I'm coming to this discussion with a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, to be honest. Um, and I'm curious, why don't we have a reference point for balancing work and life and goals and contentment? Why is it literally confusing to find a middle ground between striving and laziness? So I have a lot of notes on this discussion. I tried to look through multiple lenses for today's chat, including looking at balance on a societal level, including our ideas about work ethic. I wanted to look a little bit about what the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali say about balance. I wanted to take a quick peek through both a dualist and non-dualist lens to look at the idea of mind-body balance, um, and kind of how we might start to look at balance from an individual perspective and maybe some strategies. So through all of that, I'll keep asking for your thoughts as we flow through all these subjects. And I'll look forward to your questions and your insights and your strategies and areas that you want to keep exploring. So let's start by talking about work ethic. So where do our ideas about the ethics of work and rest come from? And here in North America, we often point to the very powerful influence of the Puritans when it comes to work, rest, and leisure. Although I should mention that they aren't the only group who had very strong ideas about work. But the Puritans believed that working hard was a crucial part of their faith. They thought that when people put in effort, it pleased their God. And they also thought that hard work could lead to success, allowing them to take care of themselves and their families. And within this belief was also the idea that excessive rest or leisure was indicative of immorality. The Puritans were big on self-sufficiency and making money through working hard and being careful with their resources. They believed that having resources or possessions was a sign that their God was happy with them. And some theorize that this focus on working hard and being self-reliant, along with their need to do things like trade goods with both Indigenous people and back in England, this helped North America become a lot more focused on trade and having a capitalist individualist mindset. And this work ethic is fundamental to settler colonial projects like the US or Canada or Australia in order to extract the resources of newly discovered lands. They needed people's hard work. So work was encouraged to the point that rest and leisure was considered almost an affront to the project of colonization. And if we look at some of the more influential thinkers and innovators who really impacted our modern lives and our modern thinking, folks like Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla, for example, they thought sleep was, and I quote, a waste of time. They didn't see the value in rest, and they didn't understand the reality of our need for rest. So all of this created a culture where rest was equated with laziness and immorality, and hard workers were considered more morally upright than people who lived more balanced lives. And to me, this is particularly interesting when we look at the lives of the Indigenous people of the time, who lived much more in harmony with the natural cycles of the seasons. and this really gets me thinking, I don't want to get too off track here, but I think it's interesting to consider how our personal relationship with work and rest also impacts how we think about work and rest when it comes to how we approach relationships and community and our built environment and farming and agriculture and our economy. Having deeply rooted ideas of work and growth and individual achievement at all costs has costs. So I think when we talk about balance, it's important to talk about why we don't have balance, and maybe our ideas about work ethic play a role there. And now, what world do we live in? We live in a world that glorifies hustle culture. And so it's no wonder that we struggle to find a reference point for balancing work and life. The constant pressure to achieve more and do more and be more can really leave us feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from our inner selves. But to me, amidst that chaos, we have an opportunity to redefine balance on our own terms. So pause for a moment and reflect on this notion of balance. Is it about juggling our commitments like a circus act, or is it about finding harmony within ourselves and within our surroundings? Or perhaps it's a bit of both. Balance in its truest sense is a state of equilibrium where we feel grounded and centered and aligned with our values. So why is it so challenging to strike a balance between work and rest? And maybe part of the answer for that lies in that societal conditioning that we've just talked about that tells us that productivity equals worth. We've been conditioned to believe that constant busyness is a badge of honor, whilst rest and relaxation are seen as signs of weakness or immorality. But in reality, balance requires honoring both our need for action and our need for rest. But will society let us do that, right? So those are some thoughts on balance. Let's turn to talking about what do the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali have to say about balance? So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a foundational text of yoga philosophy and ethics, does share some insights on balance, even though it was written, 2,000 years ago. It could still be relevant to us today, especially in terms of physical practice and finding a kind of mental equilibrium. So a few of the sutras that touch on balance include Sutra 133, which reads, "The mind becomes clear and serene when the qualities of the heart are cultivated. Friendliness towards the joyful, compassion towards the suffering, happiness towards the ethical, and impartiality towards the unethical." And this sutra, which is speaking about the four virtues, outlines the qualities of a balanced or equanimous mind, which guides us towards mental and emotional balance amidst the dualities of life. It speaks of cultivating friendliness towards those who are happy, compassion towards those who are suffering, joy towards those who are virtuous, and detachment towards those who are non-virtuous. And perhaps this practice and these ethics could help us reframe the way that we look at balance in our lives. Sutra 229, speaking about the 8 limbs of yoga. There are 8 limbs of yoga: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. So this sutra lists the 8 limbs of yoga, of which balance is an inherent aspect. Each limb, from the ethical principles of the yamas and niyamas to the unbound consciousness of samadhi, these contribute to the overall balance and integration of the practitioner. Then we have Sutra 246, which states that the physical postures or the asanas should be steady and comfortable. And this sutra highlights the importance of finding steadiness and ease in our yoga postures. And it suggests that balance in our physical practice comes through the practice of balancing work and rest, doing and not doing, effort and ease. And this balance might come through practicing asana and then relaxation, as we often do in the usual yoga class, or perhaps balance of work and rest within each pose, or within each breathwork technique, or within each meditation. Yeah, Sutra 248. Then we are no longer upset by the play of opposites. So following on that previous sutra, this sutra suggests that by mastering the balance of effort and relaxation in yoga postures, we can become unshaken by the dualities of life. And this includes the pairs of opposites, pleasure and pain, success, failure. And to me, these sutras offer us some wisdom on how to cultivate balance, not only in the physical realm, but also in our minds and in our hearts. They remind us that balance is a holistic endeavor that encompasses all aspects of our being. So those are some ideas on balance from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Next, let's talk about mind-body balance. So I think it's worth taking a moment to consider what we mean when we talk about mind-body balance in yoga. Is this just kind of nodding at a holistic approach to health and well-being and self-care? Or are we speaking more specifically to a dualistic philosophy, or are we talking about an approach that might not actually reflect how you think about the self or how you experience being? So let's just take a quick moment to talk about what does dualistic and non-dualistic mean. So in yoga, there's both dualistic and non-dualistic philosophies. In dualism, there's an idea that we are made of two components, purusha, or spirit, consciousness, and prakriti, or the material stuff of our body and mind. And if we're to follow a dualistic approach, yoga is about freeing our consciousness or spirit from its entanglement with the material, right? And this is largely the approach of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So the goal of yoga would be not so much mind-body balance, but rather overcoming the stuff of body and mind in order to abide in spirit. Whereas in non-dualism, spirit and matter are not seen as distinct and separate and in opposition to each other, but rather part of a whole. So this holistic philosophy sees all aspects of the self, body, mind, consciousness, spirit, as arising from the same source, and as part of a singular energy. So for the dualist, body and mind are seen as separate, as obstacles to overcome. Whereas for the non-dualist, body and mind are fundamentally interconnected. So how does this relate to our ideas about balance? When we talk about body-mind or mind-body balance, which I still do in my own teaching to a certain extent, what are we talking about? Are we talking about taking care of ourselves in a holistic way? Are we talking about caring for ourselves through the biopsychosocial spiritual model? How does this relate to our ideas about health and illness and disease? The reason why I might continue to use the term mind body in my own teaching, I think, is to convey that yoga encompasses a wide range of practices, such as asana and meditation and breath work and ethics. all of which can enhance not only our physical health, but also our mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. So that's a reason I might continue to use that term. You might use different language for a similar purpose, especially if you're committed to either a dualist or non-dualist framework. I think it's an important point to continue to explore and to have a think about. So let's talk about what balance isn't. Because I think sometimes we have vague notions about balance, and to sit down and like, what is it? What isn't it? Can be useful. And to me, what balance isn't is static or unchanging. It isn't perfection. It isn't universal. Balance isn't the same for everyone, right? Um, Balance might not be visible to others. And what balance is for you might look different than what balance is for someone else. Balance isn't exclusive. It isn't passive. It isn't something that just happens. And balance certainly isn't ignoring your needs in order to meet your goals. And one of the reasons I mention that is because even in practices like yoga that are intended to guide our journey towards self-awareness and physical health and spiritual enlightenment, imbalances can arise. The yoga community, not just modern yoga, but spanning centuries, has been marked by folks pushing themselves excessively in practices that are decidedly not fostering balance. So that's something to think about. What is not balance? So what might balance be? And what might balance be for you? Fluid, right? Changeable. Active, something that we actively participate in. Mindful. Inclusive. Personal or individual. So, you know, what balance is to me might be different than what balance is to you. Balance might be dependent on here and now, what's happening now, what are my circumstances, how do I find balance in these circumstances. And balance might be invisible to others, and balance might be meeting your needs and then your goals, right? So those are some ideas on balance, and like, so how do we balance? And I think these are ideas to consider. Like, how do we balance? That might for you mean balancing work and rest, which is going to look different for everyone, right? Balance might include examining beliefs and biases about work and rest and leisure and self-care and health. It might require acknowledging that balance is fluid rather than static. So what is balanced today might not be balanced tomorrow. And it might require both understanding your priorities and your goals and your aims, and also being flexible and adaptable with those goals and aims, right? And I think it can be an interesting exercise to think about the ingredients that impact your balance, including how you spend your time, your movement and meditation practice, how you fuel and nourish yourself, how you engage socially, how you engage with your work, how you care for yourself and others, how you rest and recharge, what environments you spend time in, how you feel about yourself, your beliefs and values, and how are you meeting the challenges of life. So thinking about all those ingredients that might influence your state of balance or your approach to balance, I think those are good things to be reflecting on. And again, because it is individual, right? So let's explore some practical strategies for finding some balance in our lives. First and foremost is prioritizing self-care, right? Just as we encourage our students to listen to their bodies on the mat, we also must listen to our own needs on and off the mat. And that means carving out time for rest and relaxation and rejuvenation. Burnout for yoga teachers happens. It's quite a regular phenomenon. And to avoid burnout, we do have to practice self-care and try to maintain a balance in our lives. Next is to learn to set boundaries. Easier said than done. But no, the boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges that allow us to respect our needs while maintaining healthy relationships, maintaining our commitments, right? So whether that means saying no to extra work or putting a literal geographical boundary around where you'll go to teach your yoga classes, maybe it means setting aside time for your own practice and for self-reflection. Boundaries are really important for maintaining balance. So, and for some of us, that's a very strong practice and needs regular attention. Thirdly, exploring the yamas and niyamas. So bringing the ethics of yoga into your everyday life can be a really great way to both learn more about yourself and to also find a balance that works for you. So these ethical practices are non-harming, truthfulness, integrity, moderation, non-attachment, simplicity, contentment, clarity, refinement, and relaxation. So having the yamas and niyamas in your life, both as tools for self-reflection and as tools for active practice, I think is really useful when we're exploring creating more balance in our lives. Fourth, practice mindfulness or present momentness in your life. So mindfulness is not just about meditation or the literal meditation practices you do. It's also about bringing awareness to all the moments of your life. You know, when you're washing dishes, when you're leading a yoga class, when you're standing in line at the grocery store. By staying present and tuning in to our thoughts and feelings, we can cultivate a deeper sense of balance and clarity in our lives. So practicing mindfulness. Number 5, embrace imperfection. Balance is not about achieving perfection. It's about, at least to me, finding peace amidst the chaos. Give yourself permission to make mistakes, to falter, to stumble, to grow. Remember, it's okay to recalibrate and readjust your balance as needed. Life moves like this, balance is going to move like this too, right? Hope that gives you some ideas to start to build some practical strategies about balance. As we close our discussion, I do encourage you to reflect on these ideas in your own life and look at balance through the lens of your own personal life, your community, your culture, your circumstances. Think about how can you create more harmony between your work and personal life? What practical steps can you take to cultivate a greater sense of balance and well-being? And remember that the journey to balance is ongoing. But, you know, with our yoga practice, with mindfulness, with intention, we can find our way back to a place of center, right? So those are some ideas on balance. I thank you for joining me for this little exploration of balance. I really appreciate the discussion with you. So until next time, may you find peace and equilibrium in all that you do. Thank you.